For Sunday, September 27th, you have found the Georgia Gang. Welcome. Our topics today include gangs on the rise, the future of Turner Field, and DeKalb corruption. Stay with us. Good morning.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Good morning. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams, who will be out for a few weeks with a hip replacement. And we wish him well and keep him in our thoughts and prayers. And we have got a liberal coup, it looks like, this morning. We've got three of my colleagues here. We've got Theron Johnson, Jeff Dickerson, and Alexis Scott. And Theron, this could be the Oscar performing acting role of a lifetime here. You are now going to be the conservative for smaller government and for less spending and less taxes. Can you handle that?
Well, Phil, I think we've been reading about, and you've even talked about this demographic shift in Georgia. I think you see it here now that you guys, the conservatives, need to get in line because we're taking over and we're here to stay.
Yeah, I'm not frightened.
All right.
Well, and since this is the Georgia Gang, what better way to start a topic this morning than to talk about something that's been in the news this past week, and that is the shocking rise of gang violence here, not just in Georgia, but nationally. And let me set the stage, and I want to go around the table in a minute. But the Cobb County DA Vic Reynolds spoke out this past week, and he's kind of issuing a Paul Revere-like warning for the state of Georgia and the gang activity. Gang murders are on the rise, that he points out. There was a quote from an FBI source in 2001. You had 20,000 gang members in metro Atlanta, and it's on the increase. Nationally, you had 1.4 million gang members in 2011. That was an increase of 400,000 in just 2 years. So it's all over. And Vic Reynolds is pointing out, at the very least, we need for our Attorney General Sam Olens to set up a gang prosecution unit. So let me go around the table and tell me what you're hearing and your thoughts, Theron.
Well, I think the first thing, Phil, you did a really good job of not only setting the stage, but you really got your statistics in there. I think if you really just look at Georgia, and one of the things that we haven't reported about is different police chiefs all around the state of Georgia, sheriffs, school officials have come together to create this sort of A-10 coalition to basically attack this gang violence. That's not, you're right, just not just going on in the city of Atlanta, but it's going on all across the country, especially in rural parts of Georgia as well. So I think what you're seeing now is, in this along, I mean, if you look at this coalition, I just want to talk about it. They've made 100 gang arrests just in the city of Atlanta alone in the last month or so. And so I think what you got to do is you got to get everyone at the table to talk about this whole systemic issue of this gang violence. I mean, you got to have the schools included, but also I think it is imperative on sheriffs and the Attorney General to step in here, because I think we all agree that it's out of control and we've got to do something about it.
Jeff?
Well, you know, it's not just the Attorney General of the state. It's the local district attorneys, and I think that they're plugged into this issue. They see it. They see, they see these folks coming through the courthouse, and they're concerned about it. And privately, some in the metro area have told me just how concerned they are about this issue. So I think that when you pull together all of the resources that you need with prosecutors, police, schools,
Correct,
and educational leaders, in addition to some of the major initiatives that we have going on in the city. For instance, with the West Side Future Fund and efforts to revitalize some of our most troubled communities. And those efforts are real. We've got real money and real power behind those efforts. You put them all together, I think we're going to be able to address and tackle this problem.
Right.
Yeah, I also think it probably the burgeoning is a result of the Great Recession, where people were out of work, had no resources, and so they made their own economy. And there's always been this underground economy of outlaws, and this has exacerbated it. And I think that it calls again for a metro-regional approach for the Atlanta region, but also a statewide approach.
But real quick,
I
what
agree.
Jeff just said, and it's like once the law enforcement agencies do their job, we've got to also talk about the next phase, which is what he talked about, is when these gang members are actually arrested, they should be prosecuted and they should not be let out back into the community.
Yes.
Because we know all about the reoccurring crimes that happen, not just in Atlanta, I want to be clear, but all across the state, because we've got to make sure that these criminals are locked up, and we've got to make sure that they are actually not put back on the streets, because they continue to reoccur and commit these crimes time in and time out.
Well, I agree, and prosecution is the key. Now, there's a tough gang law here in Georgia, but I'm told by Vic Reynolds and others in law enforcement that a lot of times that is not being used. For example, if a gang member attacks somebody and a cop in Atlanta just does simple battery, then he's out, you know, in 6 to 8 months, and so we've got to get tougher. And Alexis, I partially agree with you on the economic problems, but law enforcement tells us that some of these mean gangs come from Chicago and L.A., and it used to be the neighborhood gangs here. That's changing rapidly. It's now an almost mafia-like. It's a mafia-like financial enterprise now, rather than a neighborhood gang that we used to face.
Well, it's as I said, there's always been that outside economy that's
well,
been
the breakdown
in
of the
place.
family isn't helping. Let's point that out too. You get these shiftless youths. Many of them are recruited. This is sad. You've got 9 and 10-year-olds being recruited by gangs. The gang is their family, from what educators
Phil, you're
tell us.
supposed to be the moderator today. Now, let's not.
Well, I'm also giving out facts. Do you disagree with that?
Yeah,
No,
well,
do you disagree with that?
There's always been an underground economy of gangsters and outlaws, and they weren't called the breakdown of the family. When was that? Has it always been a breakdown of the family?
So
what are
you don't
talking
think
about?
there's a breakdown of the family?
I don't think that has to do with the gang activity.
Well, since
It's
we're
not a
talking
result
about
of
Gwinnett
that.
County, let's just look at Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County is probably one of the most diverse counties in the metro area. I think it's actually the most diverse, right? So for this sheriff to now come out and say what he's saying, you got to also talk about, if you want to talk about family, a lot of the gang participation are from Hispanic gangs. And so it's not just African Americans, but I think you're kind of alluding to when you talk about the breakdown of the family.
I didn't allude to that. I'm just talking about the breakdown of family by all races.
But I think that now it's time for more parents to have a parental responsibility and start talking to our kids early on about not being vulnerable and succumbing to gang violence.
I agree with that.
I also think there was a report in the AJC this week about the gang activity inside the prison system in the
Yes.
state.
Yeah. Yes.
And that is a sophisticated level that has emerged with new technology, with the cell phones, and
Right.
they're carrying on business right inside the prison, just as if they were outside. So
That's right. That was a shocker.
That is shocking. So
Yeah.
people being arrested and put in jail is not going to stop the gang activity.
Well, let me shift gears. There was a report this week, and my sources tell me it's an accurate report, that Governor Deal and some of the key legislators want to expand the state Supreme Court. As you may remember, last legislative session, he expanded the Georgia Court of Appeals. And it would be interesting political ramifications, I think, if the governor wants it, it'll go through. Do you think that, Theron? We'll go around the table.
I think we got to wait and see. You know, Governor Deal has a lot of political capital right now. He's definitely using it for other initiatives. So I think they've got to really get out and talk to the community about is there a need for more judges? And if it's so, I think that he'll have that conversation.
I don't know that we actually need that kind of initiative at the appellate level. I think that we may need it at the bench level. We need it at the local level. We need Superior Court judges. They're overwhelmed with cases. So if we could have some state support for local judges, you know, instead of what does that amount to? A political expansion for all practical purposes to hear appeals when we've got a huge backlog. You know, at the local level, at Superior Court, state court level.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff's assessment. I mean, I think that's where the backlog and the caseload is at the local level, and that's where the resources should go.
Well, I also saw an item this past week, too, where the state school superintendent, Richard Woods, has a new project, and that is, and I would hope you all would agree with it, to give every fourth grader in our public schools a U.S. Constitution. Alexis, you're shaking your head. You don't want them to read the Constitution?
I want them to, but everybody can just Google it. I mean, you don't have to spend money to buy these things printed on paper. I mean,
what I want to hear the superintendent say is not just give it to our students, but make sure that he respects the rights and opportunities that's actually in that document. Let's not forget, we got to make sure that our children, especially in Georgia, have the rights to quality education. So I think it was a very symbolic move for the superintendent, but it's symbolic versus substance. And I think the substance in his attempt is to make sure that he adheres to the actual true meaning of that document.
I think we're still teaching ethics in the schools. I'm hoping that ethics, civics in the schools, and I'm hoping that, the Constitution is a part of those lessons. It kind of reminds me of when Zell Miller wanted to pass out classical music CDs to all the babies in the state of Georgia.
Right.
And maybe that'll make them smarter. And maybe, passing out the U.S. Constitution will make these folks better civic citizens.
Zell said it did make him smarter, Jeff.
Okay,
but
good. But it seems like
a good use of
it seems
state
like
funds.
a trick.
when we come back, we're going to be talking about, guess what? DeKalb County corruption. It just continues.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And in this segment, let's talk very quickly about William Perry. He used to be the executive director of Common Cause, and they kicked him out because it went in a more left-wing direction. And now he's got his own watchdog group, and he pledges that he's just going to be looking at campaign finance and other things. Is this, Theron, will turn to you. Is this a good thing?
Yeah, I think William Perry has developed a reputation for looking into different instances that he's investigated within government. I think the problem occurred is that he went after a few people and didn't really have any substance to his argument. And I think that the organization felt like he was maybe too, as you put it, too left or too liberal. But I would just hope that William, in his new pursuit, will understand that there are good people in government. I mean, there is good government, and not to just go after the actual bad things that he think that people are doing. I think that we need transparency. We need watchdog groups like that. But I think that it shouldn't just always be about getting a story in the media and trying to hit someone because you may have a personal vendetta against them. So I'll wait to see how it actually turns out.
All right. What about Common Cause? Is that now becoming irrelevant since they removed moderates?
I don't think that it's irrelevant. I don't think that they've removed moderates. I don't buy this notion that they're moving to the left, and that's why William Perry is leaving. And I don't know if William Perry is going out to start a right-wing organization. I don't know what William Perry is doing. But the basics for this entire thing, to me, seem to be absurd. They said that they wanted to focus more on policy, and that going after airport concessionaires or whatever it was that William Perry was more focused on wasn't where the organization was headed. And if an organization wants to head in a different direction than one of its local leaders, then he's either got to get on board or not, and it seemed like he didn't.
Right.
Well, the National Organization of Common Cause fired several board members, including Democrats, who wanted a more moderate approach. Did you remember that, Alexis?
Well, I just think it's clearly that they had a difference of opinion about which direction to go. And so it's up to the person who is the employee to step away if he doesn't agree with that direction. So that's apparently what he has done. And as Theron pointed out, it remains to be seen what he does with his new organization that he has founded.
Well, Theron, let me go back to you on another topic that's interesting a lot of folks in Metro Atlanta, and that's the future of Turner Field. That's again been in the news, and of course the Fulton County Recreation Authority is a huge player in the future development there. Right. There's been some reports that perhaps the neighborhood input is being ignored. What are you hearing?
Well, I'm not hearing that at all. I'm so glad you asked me this question. I think the town hall information meeting that the Fulton County Recreation Authority did this week was very, very good. I think it was a step forward to making sure that not only the community, but people who are interested in this wonderful redevelopment opportunity came and actually heard about the transparency of the process. I mean, Keisha Lance Bottoms came out a few weeks ago, and basically when John Eves sort of was calling for this more public input, I mean, they were planning to do that already. So I think you see a swift action to the response of the people. And I think the community, they were able to voice their concerns. I know that the mayor actually showed up, Mayor Reed showed up and took some questions. And so I think that the Rec Authority is to be commended. And I think that Keisha Lance Bottoms with her leadership is to be commended as well.
Hey, and I bet Jeff can give us some insight too.
Well,
Tell him,
my disclaimer, I moderated that event, and the authority, the Rec Authority, is a client of mine. I think that one of the things that they wanted put on the record for everybody is at the end of 16, the Braves are going to be out of that facility. And I think that the Braves have made that clear. They've done it in a formal letter. They've done it very publicly. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that the city of Atlanta, Fulton County, or the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority wants for the taxpayers to pay a dime in mothballing or maintaining that facility. In other words, you want to make sure that you've got some other owner responsible for the maintenance of this 48,000 behemoth, right? So that taxpayers aren't on the hook for it. It's just that simple. The question is, can you do that and still have significant community input at the same time? And every indication from all of the urban planners, all of the experts, is that you can.
Right. It's 77 acres there in the middle of town. And they couldn't really do anything until they got the official letter from the Braves that they were leaving, and that just happened in the last few weeks. So they seem to be operating on track.
Right. Let's touch on DeKalb County real quick, because I've got some new information for the viewers. As we all know, the Mike Bowers Richard Hyde report will be coming out very soon, and my sources tell me there's going to be some more bombshells. I've already indicated on the program that the commissioners are in the spotlight for financial irregularities. Some judges are in the spotlight, and get a load of this. DA Robert James is now in the spotlight for possible irregularities, so let's stay tuned for that. And I don't know what's going to happen, but Jeff, have you heard anything more?
You know, I haven't heard a lot. I know that report is late. I think that we were expecting it. I think Lee May called for it.
He did.
To be released. It seemed like by now, at the very latest. So hopefully it'll get out there. We'll just let the chips fall where they may.
Well, that's right.
This was sought after by folks in county government. They're going to have to deal with
whatever comes out.
And now
whatever comes out.
And now acting CEO Lee May doesn't want it. In fact, he fired Bowers. He fired Bowers and Hyde on August 6th. Yeah. Well, Bowers and Hyde have been working for free to finish their investigation.
Well, let me just tell you this. Let me push back a little bit. Interim CEO Lee May actually did hire Mike Bowers. Mike Bowers has been paid anywhere nearly to $700,000 for his work. And so I think let's just stay tuned. Let's not jump to conclusions. Let's just wait for the report to come out and see what happens.
All right. My prediction, Lee May going down.
Oh, boy.
Stay with us, and we're going to be talking some politics and maybe the Pope.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And on Friday, we had an interesting announcement up from Capitol Hill in Washington, and that was that Republican House Speaker John Boehner of Ohio resigned the speakership and is going to be leaving Congress at the end of October. And my first thought, I want to go around the table, is I wonder, with Georgia's Congressman Tom Price in the top leadership, could this be his moment to make a move?
I think Tom Price definitely got to be considered. I mean, he is the highest ranking member of Congress serving on the Budget Committee from Georgia, in that particular Republican leadership. But I think, let's go back to Boehner's resignation. I think it speaks volumes of the tension and dissension right now that's going on in the Republican Party. I mean, if you look at it, the top 2 or 3 Republicans that are leading the Republican primary right now are people who are not elected. I mean, if you look at what Donald Trump and others have done, they basically run this outsider message that's sort of making it very, very hard for people like Speaker Boehner to get things done in Congress. And so I think it's a very shocking surprise that he's resigning. I think it's a big blow to Republicans that he's going to be resigning. I think you see, even with Scott Walker jumping out of the presidential race, is that the Republican Party has an issue that they got to deal with, because folks on the side of the Republicans don't want sort of your traditional career politicians anymore. Yeah, establishment politicians.
What do you think, Joe?
You know, it just looks like disarray at a really bad time for the Republican conference. You've got, this wide and somewhat unwieldy field of presidential candidates out there. And, I know you want to talk about the Pope, but one of the things in this message was about polarization. And these opposing sides, whether it's Christian Muslim, whether it's fundamentalist, whether it's political.
Or the hard left.
And the hard right, the hard left, and how that really hurts our politics. And if Boehner is being forced out because he was too moderate, because he was really just trying to get in there, make sausage the way we do politics, and he was willing to compromise with others, that doesn't bode well for our body politic.
Right, and I also think, speaking of the Pope, I mean, he addressed the Congress, as Jeff referred to, and Boehner is a practicing Catholic, and he said the main thing is to abide by the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto me, unto you. And Boehner, the next day, he says, "I'm going to quit." And I think that's because he just can't stand the fighting, and he just doesn't want to continue with the wrangling.
Well, speaking of dissension and tension, I did want to go to the Democratic presidential contest, where I saw just the other day the report that a top Biden aide was on Amtrak and babbling into his cell phone that Biden's going to run, and it's just a question of timing. What's going to happen, Theron? You're a strategist. What's going to happen with Biden getting in?
I think Vice President, well, I hadn't read that article about the staffer, but I think Vice President Biden is definitely looking at this closely. I think he said publicly that it's something that he's got to make sure that he is emotionally ready to do. But look, I mean, Hillary Clinton is still doing very well in the national polls. She had a surge in her recent numbers. And so I think if Vice President Biden wants to get in, as I call him Uncle Joe, I think it would be great. But at the same time, I think he's got to really consider how much good work the Clinton campaign has done in some of the early primary states right now.
Any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that assessment. I think that short of her being indicted, which it doesn't look like she will be, that it would do more harm to the Democratic Party cause than good if for Vice President Biden to step in. And I think he wants to maintain the legacy of the Obama administration, of which he was a very important part, and he doesn't want to do anything to tarnish that.
I think that the opponents of Hillary Clinton have kind of blown their wad. I mean, they had an opportunity if they'd waited with all these revelations about the emails and all of that. If they'd waited another 6 or 9 months, when you really could have done some significant damage to a presidential campaign.
So you don't think Biden can hurt Hillary's climb
well,
to the nomination?
the thing, Biden's not in the race, and he's got 25% of the vote, right? So
Right.
there are a lot of folks out there who want to see a Biden presidency. It's just that I think that Hillary Clinton is going to be able to get over this bump. And in 6 months, nobody's going to be talking about emails anymore.
Even though the polls, including Democratic voters, say she's untrustworthy, that's pretty bad.
I think Secretary Clinton did a really good thing this past weekend at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Week. She actually had a very well-attended meet and greet. She understands that she's got to go and sort of touch some of these base voters. And so I agree with Jeff. I think, look, people have shot at her time and time again with the emails. She's been as transparent as she can. So I think she's battle-tested. And if Biden gets in, which I don't know if he will, it may not be a bad thing. It may be a healthy debate.
All right, well, that's the last word from Theron. So when we come back, it's winners and losers time. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Welcome back to the Georgia Gang. I'm Phil Kent, sitting in for Dick Williams. And Theron, let's start with you on some winners and losers.
Yeah, two quick winners. I think the Pope has definitely got to be a winner. I agree with Jeff and Alexis' message. He talked about doing more for the poor, accepting, welcoming immigrants, and making sure that the money that we generate in this country is for the poor people as well. The second person I want to recognize is Matthew Winston, who a lot of folks may know. He's University of Georgia Special Assistant to the President of the University of Georgia. Got a big promotion. He's going to be going to Virginia Tech, his alma mater, to be the Senior Associate Vice President of Alumni Relations. So I want to make him my winner. And then the loser has got to be Wick Warren. We've talked about on this show the slumlord kind of guy who got convicted of 2 counts of violating housing policy. So I definitely want to make him my loser.
Jeffrey.
I have the same winner and loser. You know, the Pope. I mean, this was the first ever joint session address to the joint session of Congress. He touched on some issues that I think that are politically uncomfortable for some, but that seem to me in the tradition of Christianity and do unto others, as you mentioned earlier, Alexis. It was a wonderful speech. I think that he is re-energizing Catholicism in the United States and around the world. Did you know that a third of the members of Congress are Catholic, and that the two gentlemen sitting behind the Pope, both Boehner and Biden, are Catholic?
Right.
And 6 of the Supreme Court justices.
And several of the Supreme Court justices, and we saw the tears from the Speaker, Boehner. It was quite an event. Rick Warren is a predator, and I got to make the mayor a winner for getting in there and making sure that this man went to jail. If you don't know what these housing violations are about, go back and read that AJC story. It is stunning. And the only thing that we need to do here is make sure that we've got tougher penalties for people like Rick Warren who are out there preying on poor people, because they're not tough enough right now.
Got it. Alexis?
All right. I want to try to redeem myself from last week and name Jennifer Barlamont, the new executive director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. She came to us from Cleveland, so congratulations to her and to us. Also, Hank and Billy Aaron. I didn't mention that they gave $3 million to the Morehouse School of Medicine, so everybody's a winner as a result of that. And then Atlanta got a shout out from the Pope by mentioning MLK as part of the 4 American citizens that he pointed out to be ideal people to follow.
Right. Well, I'll make the Pope a winner too, especially when he visited the Little Sisters of the Poor and wanted religious liberty. I thought that was a great call, especially with the Democrats. And you know, Yogi Berra is the winner, the great catcher, died at 90. And you know, a reporter asked him where he wanted to be buried when he died, and his great remark was, surprise me. Come back next week and watch the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.